Hello and welcome to another episode of ContinuousX podcast, where we try to solve for X in the SDLC equation. I'm here with my colleagues Mike Fitzurka and Jason Quattlebaum. Jason, I understand you have a question for us.
Yeah, and a little question, some observation. Recently, NIST came out with their SSDF, or Secure Software Development Framework. And I just want to, run that by you, see what your initial thoughts were with what you saw come across from NIST in this variation that we've been waiting on for a little while.
Yeah, and thanks for that question, Jason. And for those who are not familiar with NIST, it's the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And it's part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. And its mission is to promote the innovation and industrial competitiveness by advancing measurement in science, standards, and technology. And what that means is it's trying to provide metrics or measurements in the area of lots of areas of technology to improve the quality of life for U.S. citizens. And it ranges from publications to smart power grids to health records, atomic clocks, computer chip, you name it. And they usually have a standard or a measurement in some form. And where that relates to us in the IT industry is that it generates publications that are specific to computer science, cybersecurity, et cetera. They actually produce lots of resources, as what you mentioned in the Secure Software Development Framework, an area like that. But they also have publications that address cybersecurity, supply chain risk management, DevSecOps, which also references this Secure Software Development Framework. And what that is, it's general guidelines that defines the best practices that an organization should exhibit when developing secure software. And what they do is they provide this framework in 4 groups of best practices. Now, they're agnostic to the technology, they're agnostic to who does it. They just say that these practices are exhibited by organizations that are trying to produce secure software. And those 4 groups of practices are broken down as follows. They have the preparing the organization, which is basically, you have defined that you're going to produce secure software. What are the requirements that you're going to exceed or meet in order to be secure? And also marshaling the resources and the right technologies in order to achieve that outcome. And the next one is to protect the software, which means not only physically protecting it, but making sure that it's not accessed by people that have no need to access that particular software. And that's software that you're going to produce or tools and utilities used in order to produce software, which is the next category of best practices, which is producing well-secured software. And that is implementing the right best practices, the right measurements, the right controls while you're producing software in order to ensure that you're meeting your goals and you're not instituting vulnerabilities into your systems. And then the last one is to respond to vulnerabilities. This one's interesting because I've talked to a lot of CISOs and even our colleague, Don McLean, who's our cybersecurity chief technologist. And he always preaches, and I found it interesting, that it's not really that you implement vulnerabilities in your software. That's probably going to happen over a course of time. What's really important is to identify them and respond to them and remedy them quickly. That's more of the control and what you want to achieve. So it's a whole series of mechanisms to identify vulnerabilities, either at runtime or during preparation, and then having very fast methods to rectify them in a timely manner in order to reduce your cost and reduce vulnerability or your posture within the industry. And I think each of these groups has many best practices laid out to them at a high level, and then they're broken down into individual tasks that represent your ability to achieve that outcome of secure software. And then tangible examples, which I think is very important, that they list in there, so that an organization can actually juxtapose their activities against these examples and grade themselves in order to identify where they need improvement, and have a marker from which they want to achieve. And again, it's all for the goal of identifying or improving your ability to deliver software with little to no vulnerabilities.
Well, great. Thanks for that explanation. So you've got NIST's SSDF, you got DLT's SSF, which we've been working on and evangelizing for 2 years. How do we do? Are we in the same realm, or is there major differences in those thoughts?
In many ways, I think it's actually kind of impressive in how similar we are. There were a lot of similarities of requests. If anything, though, I think it didn't kind of go far enough sometimes. They focused very much on the security, which is important, but it's just one of the letters. The software development factory part of it is kind of probably left to some other publications or so. It's mainly focusing on the security aspects and how do I implement security into it, into that software development. But they don't talk about the development process itself so much. They don't go into testing. They reference that it should be included, but it's I don't think that they believe this, that security should be bolted on, but by only focusing on security, it gives a little bit of that impression, although I think that's inaccurate. I do believe they, in talking with them in previous things, that no, that security needs to be baked in and not just added on. But this publication is a bolted on element of security, expecting that you already have a development process. So in our SSF, we try to address all of it simultaneously. So when we're talking about putting a pipeline together, we're not just talking about how do I secure it, but we're talking about how do I even build it, from scratch, taking care of all the other concerns and not just the security concern. That's probably more a function of it being as its publication around security, but a lot of their processes are that way. I think one other thing, I love that they add a lot of elements, and it should be even added to the definition of done in an agile definition. We agree with that as well. Everything in security should be pushed as far left as possible to the developer. The only thing I don't think they explicitly say is that means that all of these utilities and tools and pipelines need to be available in the development environment. And just speaking as a developer, I don't want to push something into into the pipeline that I know that I haven't even tested on whether or not it'll fail, because that then involves other developers and could back them up. It also could make a ticket go backwards on the board. That's not a good thing. It's not that they don't say you shouldn't make it available. It's just that we would stress that in our SSF, that you've got to make all of these tools available to all your developers and push everything as far left as you possibly.
And I'd like to add on, I agree with 100% with Mike's just said. I think the main difference, or one of the main differences, that the SSDF can fit within the SSF, because I think Mike is right. We're more, our aperture is wider in terms of the whole development process, things that are included, and we're leaning very heavily on modern software techniques, whereas the SSDF is very generic, lowest common denominator, because it's dealing with lots of different software development processes that may be a little bit more antiquated. And what Mike and I and what DLT is devoted to is showing techniques in automation, in modern software development, using containers, using Kubernetes, those types of things, and wrapping security activities within that as well. So it's the whole kit and caboodle in terms of a modernized software development framework that has the right security actions embedded in it in order to achieve the same goal. Just we're trying to move an agency in a direction that will allow them to remedy, again, an outcome of the SSDF, their software vulnerabilities once found quickly. If you use the SSF framework, we believe that you can achieve that goal faster and more efficiently.
Great. Thanks, Rick, for that.
Mike, did you want to add anything on?
Oh, I was just going to add, it's not that they do have some forward-thinking elements in there. They have the infrastructure as code and running things like that. And they did mention, I think, human-readable scanning for security. I think I would just have explicitly more said, scan your infrastructure as code for security as well. Although, that, like you were saying, that demands that all the agencies then do infrastructure as code, and they're not ready to make that statement. Where we would say, yes, you should be ready to make that. So I think we're pushing, like you were saying, Rick, we were pushing more for the advanced technology.
Yeah, the SSF, once you pull back a layer of, okay, you want to deliver good software, okay, it has to be the right ingredients. It has to run on the right platform. It has the ability to scale, has the ability to report, those types of things. And that's really not addressed in there. And I think Mike's right. It's kind of alluded to, but it's not, thou shalt do this. Or we're a little bit more overt. Okay. I hope that answers your question, Jason, and removes a fog of
definitely. Makes me feel better about what we've been doing and what we've been preaching out there. Yeah, so I appreciate your guys, comparing those for us this week, and maybe we can talk about in the future some of those security aspects and continue to build on this conversation.
Yeah, I think we can have lots of episodes and automated testing. Regardless, I mean, I think testing is an area that is unexplored in the necessary extent it needs to be explored. It's the Rosetta Stone of software development.
Code that does the wrong thing could be 100% secure, but also insecure at the same time because it's allowing access that it shouldn't securely. It's got to be addressed.
It's no better than a paperweight at that point because it's useless.
Exactly.
Okay, terrific. Well, I hope you listeners, thank you guys for listening. I hope it was informative and entertaining at the same time. And tune in for our next episode where we try to solve for X in the SDLC equation.